for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly. And he thought to himself, what should I do, for I have no place to store my crops? Then he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with you, those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God. May God bless the reading, hearing, and understanding of this, God's holy word. Thanks be to God. Ben, I appreciate so much the invitation to be back with you and Firstborn today. I've been watching the post that Ben's been making during his paternity leave, and I'm so glad he taught Augie how to work on an air conditioner. Mine needs work right now.
I'll send him over.
Okay. I'm glad he taught him how to fish. I'm glad he taught him how to dunk. But there's something woefully missing in this child's early education. Ben, this child needs to be raised right.
I think he has his outfit for next Sunday.
And next time he's dunking, put him in something dunking, right?
Thank you.
I'm so glad that this congregation finally has another PK, by the way. You've waited far too long for that, so I know you'll be good to him. You know, retirement has been interesting, and as soon as I do it, I'll let you know. I stepped right into an interim that they said would just last through Christmas, and I'm still there. But they were gracious enough when I said, I want to go back and preach in my home church, because my membership is still here, and it will be until I can get back here as a member and sit in the back pew and worship with you. But in retirement, you start doing some of those things you didn't have time to do during regular life. And one thing I've noticed that I started doing is cleaning out stuff. You know, I had a 3-car garage and get one vehicle in there. There's something wrong with that. My little tractor was sitting outside, the little truck was sitting outside, and I thought, this is not right. So I started throwing stuff out and going through it and sorting through it. A lot of us have garages like that, don't we? You can't even park in them anymore. And how many of us have off-site storage units? You know, we have so much stuff that we can't keep it in our homes anymore. We have to rent a box to put it in. And so we arrange for visitation rights every now and then to go see our stuff. The late comedian George Carlin famously did an entire monologue on stuff. He proclaimed that the meaning of life is to find a place to put all your stuff, and that a house is just a place to keep your stuff while you go out and get more stuff. Funny stuff. But not funny are the TV reality shows that feature what happens to all that stuff. You know, the show Storage Wars, right? It's where confiscated storage lockers, the original owners are either dead or they're unable to pay the storage fees any longer, so they go on the auction block, and after the locks have been cut off, there's a bidding war among the stuff scavengers trying to profit off left behind stuff. And there's a loser version of that too, by the way. And it's called Storage Nightmares. Because these are where the proud new owner of an abandoned storage unit discovers that the stuff he thought in there that was treasures is just somebody's worthless junk. Third are the really, truly tragic programs detailing the lives of hoarders. Hoarders. Have you ever seen a hoarder? Have you ever been a hoarder? I don't mean somebody who collects teacups. I don't mean somebody who collects baseball cards or precious stories. A collector displays their selected objects for all to see. But a real hoarder stuffs things away because they fear they'll never have enough. And in fact, a hoarder never has enough, because hoarding is a very private disorder. It's one that usually accompanies isolation and fear and phobia. Some who've lived through the Great Depression, as my mom and dad did, found later that they felt that persistent need to accumulate food and supplies and to never waste a single thing. When I went over to clean out the folks' house, there were 7 toilet seats hanging in the garage. You can never know when you might need a part off of a toilet seat. During COVID-19, we know about hoarding, right? Toilet paper and paper towels. Hoarding became virulent due to that perceived anticipatory deprivation and anxiety that you may not have them when you need them. The hoarders are highlighted on the show, always live, they're swallowed up by their stuff, the way they live. They can't throw anything away. Their whole identity, and I mean every aspect of their life, is defined by these collected piles of stuff. And unless they're surrounded, indeed drowning in their stuff, then their lives have no meaning as far as they're concerned. And if you think you're not stuff prone or stuff inclined, do you have an online automated backup system? Right? You know what I'm talking about? Does your computer send everything you file to that all-knowing and all-saving cloud so that you don't ever lose any of your online stuff? Even if you don't have boxes of odd papers and old clothes and broken tools or raggedy toys squirreled away somewhere in a physical storage space, chances are you've got old files and months of emails and forgettable photos and just general information all stacked up in your electronic stuff, and all safely crated and cared for by some electronic gatekeeper and security system that I don't understand. No matter how high-tech your treasures may be, friends, there's still stuff. There's still stuff. Richard Myers said this about reality TV, and I like what he said. He has this poem called Sky Sports, and the gods, he said, have this feelings. They watch our planet, and they splat each other with paintball whenever there's projected envy or lust or greed. And they marvel all the while this delightful shifting misery of ours with our stuff on this planet. Well, friends, there is no escaping hecklers in life. Did you know that? And preachers and politicians and any public speaker finds them someday being confronted by a heckler. A heckler, someone with their own agenda who's anxious to take advantage of a gathered, attentive audience, to voice that opinion publicly. And in this week's gospel text, Jesus encounters a heckler. Then he uses that seemingly unrelated concerns of this man to connect the audience both to a larger crowd and Jesus' own chosen disciples to a clearer vision of what true faithfulness is and the nature of discipleship. Jesus had been speaking to the crowd about the need for perseverance in the face of persecution. His focus was on the need for fearless faithfulness because of the assurance of God's love and God's concern. And suddenly he's interrupted by this guy demanding, obviously not requesting, he was demanding that Jesus act as a legal arbiter in a family squabble over the division issues involved in an inheritance. And he wanted some justice and called on Judge Jesus to issue a decision. Now, since inheritance laws are spelled out in Deuteronomy and Numbers, this man is asking Jesus as a teacher to give a rabbinical ruling according to those laws. His very public demand for that ruling suggests that this man felt that he stood on the right side of those laws and that his brother's stance was legally and morally wrong. Now, While the NRSV translates Jesus' first response as friend, anthrope is hardly uttered in a friendly manner. We miss that in the translation. But Jesus basically says, man. I mean, that's the tone of the voice. You know, he's frustrated. Man, as Jesus continues, it's evident that the address of man is more than a curt dismissal. Jesus utterly refuses to embroil himself in this man's business and ironically rejects this role of judge, divider, arbiter in this man's financial litigation. And having disarmed and dismissed his heckler, Jesus now takes the moment with the crowd and reveals the real impetus behind the demand of the individual that just stood up wanting his way. Greed. Greed. Recognized as a vice by both Jewish and Greco-Roman cultures. The eternal, unquenchable thirst for more stuff. Regarded by both Jewish and pagan commentators as a major cause of evil and as a basic form of idolatry. And so Jesus puts gaining possessions, along with climbing social ladders, by the way, and the gift of abundant life in opposing corners. Life is not about possessions. Possessions can never give us life. To graphically demonstrate this chasm between God's gift of life and the greedy accumulation of things, Jesus tells this parable that we heard this morning about the rich fool. This parable is only found in Luke's gospel, and it begins with immediate suspect individual. It's a generic rich man. Whenever Jesus throws a generic rich man at you, watch out. Okay? And in today's gospel text parable, Jesus makes it all too clear how life and stuff are not one and the same. The rich man is faced with a good problem. His lands produce so abundantly that the upcoming harvest will overflow his current storage facilities. And never does the thought of sharing that wealth with those who might be in need ever cross the mind of this man. He's looking for a way of hoarding it and keeping it all for himself. And instead, his single dream is to, and his brainstorm is, well, I'll just tear the old barns down, bigger ones. Now, you think that's an impossible thing? I know of someone I knew in an earlier life. I won't tell you where, but they had the biggest house in the richest subdivision in that community. 4 stories tall. She had a story, he had a story, and both sons had a story. All by themselves. And when someone started building another house in that subdivision, and there was the threat that that house might be bigger, her response in the public arena was, well, if it is, I'll just tear this one down and build a bigger one. Don't think that this attitude has gone away. The rich man accompanied, he's enjoying his bumper crop. He congratulates himself on his plans for safely storing all his valuable stuff, and he looks forward to a future devoted to what? Relaxing, eating, drinking, and making merry. Nice visualization until God informs him, this is the last day of your life, dude. All those big new storage units, all that wealth, all that stuff ain't going with him. What is it that Jesus finds most offensive and most unfaithful in this rich man's fantasy of the future? It's not eating, drinking, and making merry. Jesus did that all the time. It's not relaxing and taking joy in life. Jesus did that all the time. So what is the rich man's problem? It's his focus on himself to the exclusion of others. Idolatry, friends, begins with I. And this affluent agri-entrepreneur has a focus in life that's fixated on I. What's he say? He asked himself how he should deal with this good problem of overabundance.
He congratulates himself on the answer he comes up with that benefits only himself. He rewards himself for the expected results of these decisions. The rich man determines he'll rip down the old barns, erect new ones, and live a long and carefree life because of his clever actions. But at no time, at no place, in no part is this idolatrous conversation. Does this man invite God's participation in his decisions or factor other people and their needs, not even his family, into his deliberations? This rich man has a penchant for holding secret soliloquies with himself. Having determined his course of action, tearing down those small buildings and building bigger ones, he pats himself on the back. He congratulates himself for successfully gathering and keeping and storing all those ample supplies of goods that'll keep him for many years, he says. The rich man's advice to his soul, his life force, it's now time to relax, eat, drink, and be merry. The rich man had a golden parachute. The rich man was eager to take early retirement. Jesus now points out the literally fatal flaw that's woven into this time. The future-focused fellow, and Jesus never says this about anybody, anywhere in the Scriptures, is a fool. And that's not Mr. T talking. You're a fool. The man has charted his destiny, envisioned his own future life, but he's never considered talking to God, the one who holds all the power over life and death. To live as if there's no God is to flatly rebel against God and to be a fool. So God now reveals to that rich man, despite all your possessions, despite all your controlling possessiveness, your time is up. This very night, your life is being demanded of you. That which is held in God's hands is being called into account. All the possessions, all the things the rich man had counted to his credit and control, whose will they be now? Not his. Jesus' final words in the parable point to a need to focus on the faithfulness to God, not a fixation on securing your own standing and your status in the world. The riches that we can accrue in this world are not stored up as treasures, but rather in a rich relationship with God. When a life so enriched is finally demanded of you, it'll only be the treasure that travels with you to heaven. You know, I did 2 funerals last week, and there wasn't a U-Haul trailer behind either hearse. We like stuff. We collect stuff. We buy more and more stuff. Possessions give us a feeling of status. The Broadway series is coming next year with Fiddler on the Roof. Can't wait to hear Tevye sing, raising his daughters and saying, I realize it's no shame to be poor, but it's no honor either. So would it be terrible if I were a rich man? I expect there's a little bit of Tevye in all of us. Maybe the chickens and turkeys in his song have been replaced by cars and athletic shoes, but we all like stuff, and it's a sign of success. John Wesley said, earn all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. And yet we come to this parable of a farmer whom Jesus calls a fool. Not a bad guy, just stupid. Remember what Forrest Gump said about that? Stupid is as stupid does. Jesus says, be careful, watch out, be alert. He says it right there. Learn the lesson of a very successful man. He warns us by this story. Understand there's a difference between who you are and what you have. And if you don't know that difference, then your soul is in jeopardy. What we have does not define who we are. And when is enough enough? I got to visit Mexico last year thanks to a gift from some dear friends here in the congregation. I think that's the first real vacation I've had in a long, long time. 9 days walking the beach. Couldn't find the lighthouse, Dan. Walking the beach and hiking up in the mountains, and I was reminded while I was there of a story about an American businessman that went to Mexico, and he found a fisherman there that was on the beach. He had beached his boat,
and he was napping, and the businessman looked at him and said, "Why aren't you fishing?" And he said, "Because I caught all I needed for my family this morning." And the American businessman said, "But if you went out twice a day, you'd catch twice as much fish, and you could sell a few of them. Before long, you'd make enough money to buy several boats. And with a little luck, you'll start a seafood business, and you'll be shipping fish all over the United States." And the fisherman looked at him and said, "Well, what would I do then?" He said, "You could make millions. You could retire. You could get a nice place on the beach. You could lie in the sun and look at the beautiful ocean." To which the Mexican fisherman said, "What do you think I'm doing right now?" Stuff doesn't give us life. Stuff can't love us back, friends. Remember Big Daddy, the dying patriarch, and Tennessee Williams' Cat on a Hot Tin Roof? Big Daddy and his estranged son, Brick, are wading through all the paintings and sculptures and scores of boxes in the basement when Big Daddy picks up a clock and says, "There's one thing that you can't buy at a fire sale or any other market on earth, and that's your life. You can't buy back your life when it's finished." And somewhere in the shadows, I hear Jesus saying to us today, watch out. Beware. Stay alert. Don't make a fool of yourself. Separate who you are from the stuff you have and declare to your stuff, "You're not my life. You don't own me. You'll never be my God. I will not be your slave." Because we can't take our stuff with us. The final question in this parable of the foolish farmer, I think, is poignant as we close today. Verse 20 and B, "Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" Jesus asked that. Who will get what you prepared for yourself? Now, one of these days, you and I are going to die. Ben on Wednesday said this is my last sermon. In the way that he said it, I got to listen to it, and I went, "I hope not." Ben, do you know something I don't know? He didn't mean it that way, I know, but I couldn't help my ears perked up, And I thought to myself, I hope I don't know when it's my last one. I hope it's one of those things where I'm on top of the game every time I step into this box. But there will be a last sermon someday. You'll know it, I won't. I'm 100% sure of that. And somebody will probably publish an obituary in the daily paper, and it'll be over next to the want ads. If somebody's kind enough to pay a little more, I might have a picture. If we're lucky, a few people might get together and come to that memorial service. And then some minister will remind folks we are nothing more than dust, and we throw our ashes to the wind and give our remains to the worms and say dust to dust and ashes to ashes. And then they'll walk away. They'll walk away from that committal service, and somebody will think, if not blatantly ask, "I wonder how much old Mike had." The answer to that question is simple. Old Mike left it all. That's how much he left. When you're retired, some people have told me it's time to rest. In June and July, I spoke 5 times to the high school youth camp at Wakandaho each day with our 60 kids that were there. I got home, washed clothes, preached at Newburgh on that Sunday, and left on Tuesday for a seminar with 14 kids to D.C. and New York. And I put on it happened to occur over the anniversary of my ordination, the 49th year. And I put how blessed I was. And one of my basketball players that came to your lovely dinner for me, retirement dinner, Mike Threet, posted on Facebook right after I posted that, "Yeah, I knew retirement wouldn't last." Time to rest maybe, huh?
But it's clear that the rest this man is talking about is not the rest we think of. He has way more than he could ever need. It's clear that he doesn't need what he's got for himself or his family, but his inclination is not to share it. He simply wants to keep it to himself and then rest with all the stuff he has. That's a twisty trick to Jesus' story, and he always has one. For we will all know that only God can give us rest. Only Jesus can lessen the load on us and offer us true rest. Rest, peace, wellness, security, peace of mind, fulfillment, identity, solace, joy. We cannot make our lives better by accumulating more stuff. We can only do life with God and with the people we love together. And in this we'll find our place and we'll find our peace. To be rich toward God is truly all we need. When you're serving with your heart and with your means, then God's peace will follow, and that's what true rest looks like to me, and that's why I have no intent. I'm retired, I'm not dead. That's what true rest looks like. Now, granted, I'm looking at the bucket list, and it's not going down too fast. And one of those bucket list trips, by the way, is to Italy. So my brother gave me a book of Italian phrases to learn before I go to Italy. Beautiful language. And two phrases that stick out as we close today are basta, basta, and bravo. Basta means enough already. Enough already. Basta. And bravo, you know what that means. So, basta with all the stuff. And bravo to a more fulfilled, peaceful, purposeful life in Jesus Christ. Amen.